Welcome to the Goddesses of Social Work podcast, hosted by Renita Ray Davis, licensed clinical social worker, board-approved social work clinical supervisor, and facilitator of the Goddesses of Social Work supervision community. Join us as we travel through the social work journeys told by the Goddesses of Social Work community members, past and present, as they make their way toward clinical licensure.
Welcome back to the Goddesses of Social Work podcast and to another special episode in our Remember Me series, where we're lifting up the voices of those doing the everyday extraordinary work of aging and caregiving services in Alabama. Today, I'm joined by Meghan Germek, the Community Outreach Coordinator at Central Alabama Aging Consortium. Meghan first joined CAAC as an ombudsman representative in 2022 and transitioned into her current role in the summer of 2024. Meghan was born in Birmingham and raised in Odenville, Alabama, a little rural town in St. Clair County. Meghan and her older sister were raised by a single mother with the help of her grandparents and great-grandmother. Meghan went on to graduate with a degree in social work from Jacksonville State University in 2018 and her master's of social work from Auburn University in 2020. War Eagle. She has spent her professional career working as a nursing home social worker with adjudicated youth and with substance use prevention and mental health intervention programs. Meghan currently lives in Montgomery with her husband and their two dogs. Meghan, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Glad you are here. Meghan, I love starting here. Growing up in Odenville, raised by your mom in the powerful line of women, you put that in your bio for a reason because it must mean something to you. What does it mean to have such a great legacy of women behind you?
When I was growing up, my mother, my Nana was my grandmother, and then, raised country. So I had a Nana and a Papa, and I had a nanny. So my mama, my Nana, and my nanny were my best friends. And so I was always cooking with them. We were hanging out. We were in the garden together. We were sitting on the couch watching TLC, snapping beans. We were doing all of that stuff together. And I was raised by this group of women um, to be as strong and independent as I can be. I was raised, I think, with a good head on my shoulders by these three people who had the most wonderful heads on their shoulders. And so it was just really important for me to include that in my bio so that there could be a tie between why I do the work that I do with the people I do it with, and how much I love the idea of a podcast that empowers women, and that really raises up women and allows us to promote how important it is to do that work, that helping professions who are predominantly women-based. It's such an important profession to raise up and make sure that we have the visibility that we need.
I love that, Meghan. And I didn't tell you this, but I say a prayer always before I start the podcast. And I just thank the women, literally, the women who came before us, who paved the way that we can even sit in the middle of the day and do this, but then who paved the way to make this work that we do a little bit more recognizable, a little bit easier, even though it's hard work. But I always thank those women. And one of my favorite things to do on the podcast is to say their names. And so can we say your mama's name and your nanny's name and is it Nana? And we'll even say Papa's name.
So my mama, her name is Beth Ann, and she was raised by my Nana, who is Gayanne Bodiford Ellsworth. She had no middle name. And then she was raised by Ida Ernestine Armstrong. So these are all very country names,
but
very
powerful.
Southern, but they're a strong group of women. And my papa's name was Jesse David.
Straight from the Bible.
Absolutely.
I love that. Straight from the Bible. Now, do you have Anne? It's part of your Meghan, or is it?
I was raised after another, or I was named after another woman. So one of my mom's friends' mother's name was Margaret, but she went by Meg. And so I was named in her honor because she passed away of cancer before I was born. And then my paternal, no, I'm sorry, my mom's paternal grandmother's name was Ellen. So that's my middle name, is I was raised or I was named after a different woman in our life, or two different women in our lives.
Isn't that powerful? Even your name is part of your legacy. Even your name is, but that also is something Southern women do. We get named. I'm named after Renita. I'm named after my mama's best friend as well.
Mhm.
So to be able to carry their legacy is such an honor. I love that for you. Megan, so I got your bio and I knew that we were doing this series for the Remember Me on November 1st at Central Alabama Consortium, the Central Alabama Aging Consortium. And you are part of this powerful series that we've been doing. But when I saw you were a social worker, I was like, ah. So we are blending what I usually do with the Gods of Social Work by sharing the journeys of social work with also inviting and remembering our elders by doing the Remember Me documentary screening and community event. So part of my favorite thing to do on the Goddesses of Social Work podcast is to hear the journey of social workers, how they found out about social work, how you got into the field, what was your educational experience like. We both graduated from Auburn University, again, War Eagle. What was maybe that experience like? And what has been you've been a social worker now for 7 years. What has that journey been like for you?
So when I was starting thinking about what my career was going to look like, because college wasn't a guarantee for me by any means. I was raised um, in incredible poverty. I was raised, when my first career day as a kindergartner, I went as a Walmart worker. I wore my mom's Walmart vest because my mama worked at Walmart and my nana worked at Walmart and my aunt was a manager of a McDonald's. So when I was 5 or 6 years old, I thought the biggest aspiration we could be is a manager at a McDonald's. And again, I was raised in a town of, 3 to 4 thousand people. So we didn't have not a lot of people went to college. You worked in blue collar roles. My cousin was a dispatcher and her husband was a police officer. All of those smaller town roles. You could work at the Piggly Wiggly, you could work at the gas station. Being a college graduate was just not in my scope when I was younger because of where I grew up, because of my income level, the social class that I grew up in. And nobody in my family had a degree. My nanny was a nurse, but she was a nurse in the 40s. She started nursing in the 40s. So you didn't really have to have a degree to be a nurse in the 40s. Um, and so for a long time, a professional career just wasn't in my cards to me. And so when I got older, I was, a smarter person and I knew that I was going to be able to get some scholarships and stuff. And so I thought, well, maybe I'll be a teacher. I like English, I like writing, maybe I'll be a teacher. And I started school at Jacksonville State University because I chose Jacksonville because they gave me a scholarship. I got full tuition for having the ACT score that I got. So it was the most affordable option for me. And it was about an hour away from home. So it was far enough away to be out on my own. But it was close enough where I could still go home and work on the weekends because I worked from the time I was 16, you know. And so um, when I went to Jacksonville, I started undeclared because I didn't know exactly, but I knew that I didn't want to squander the opportunity that I got. So I started undeclared and I got through all of those core classes that you have to have, your Englishes, your sciences, your histories, your maths. And I got about 3 semesters in, and the academic advisor I had was like, "Hey, you can't do this forever. Like, you're gonna have to pick something." Um, and I had been thinking like, well, what can I do? Right? What's something that speaks to me? And so I'm a quotes person, so I'm gonna use some quotes here that sort of shaped my decision making. So the first one is in the movie Schindler's List. There, at the end of the movie, the Jewish people present Oscar Schindler with a ring, and it engraved in this ring says, "He who has saved one life has saved the world entire." And that was impactful for me. I don't know, I watched that movie in the 11th grade, and my 16, 17-year-old brain kind of absorbed that. And I thought, well, if I can impact change on one person, then I will be a positive influence in the world, right? The second quote is from my favorite band. They're called the Avett Brothers. And they have a song called Salvation Song. And the last line of that song is, "We came to break the bad, we came to cheer the sad, we came to leave behind the world a better way." And so I'm a big believer in leaving the world better than you found it, leaving anything better than you found it. If you see trash, pick it up and you've made a positive impact. If you see somebody having a bad day, do your best to try to cheer them up. Any positive impact we can make in the world, I think, does change the world a little bit. And so, I just on a whim, decided, let me take an intro to social work course. I took the intro to social work course. I thought it was I thought it was awesome. I liked the professors at Jacksonville, and I also liked that all the classes were in one building on one floor, and I liked that they didn't have class on Fridays. Hey, I'm a simple girl, you know? So that's how I got started in social work. Um, and I think that Jacksonville State, I started taking social work classes probably in early 2016, maybe. And I think I had some of the greatest and most awesome professors in the world. I still, to this day, will recommend anybody to go to Jacksonville State. It's a beautiful campus. It's smaller, so you don't have to think that much about where you're going. Most of the classes, if you're in one major, they're all in one building. And it's just a cute little small town, and there's not a ton going on there. And I still think that Jacksonville is the friendliest campus in the South, is what they call it. And I do think that. Um, and so when I graduated in 2018, the whole time I had been in social work, most everybody around me had a passion. What is your passion? Your passion population is what they would ask you in school. And I never had one. I knew that I had an oh no no, which was, I don't want to work with kids. I don't want to do child social work. And um, just personally, my family had some, we were currently going through a problem with the child welfare system. We were currently dealing and navigating the child welfare system. And I was like, that is the one thing that I'm not gonna do. But I'll do anything else. So my internship for my bachelor's degree, we did 450 hours or however many it is. Um, and I worked in a nursing home. I was a nursing home social worker. And so I was hanging out with my friends all day. They would come into the office and we would hang out. I helped a resident roll his cigarettes. I helped them find, I would go get their lunch for them. I would sit and talk to them. I helped them fold their laundry. I just got to hang out with my friends all day. And if they had a problem and it came to me, then I could solve it. And so I also knew from growing up with my grandparents and hanging out with them all the time, I love elderly people. I love old people. That's just, those are my friends. And so, but I learned in my internship that nursing homes aren't just little old people, right? They're not like little elderly people sitting there crocheting and reading books and doing crosswords. There are 40, 56-year-olds in nursing homes. There are adults with developmental delays. There are um, my favorite resident I ever had was a 33-year-old woman. She had a debilitating form of cerebral palsy. She couldn't hear well. Her speech was so disjointed and slurred that nobody could understand her, but I took it upon myself and I said, I am going to understand her. And so she was my girl, anytime she needed something, I was the person they called to fix it. And her problems were so small to everybody else, right? It was a lost hairbrush, or it was she can't find the shirt that she wants to wear, or it was, her mail didn't come right, or it was her phone wasn't working. But I learned that people who have very little, their problems mean so much more to them, right? When you have nothing and the one thing that you have doesn't work, that is going to be a big problem for you. So I learned a lot of lessons um, in that time of me being an intern, and then that social worker there left. So I ended up kind of bridging the gap for her into the next person. Um, And when I had to leave that job, I left because I was moving, not because I really wanted to move. It was so hard to leave them because I felt like they were my friends. I felt like they were my family, not in a weird cohabitation social worker way, but like I was like, these are my people. And if I'm not here to fix her phone, nobody else is gonna do it, right? So, leaving there was really difficult, but I left to move to Montgomery with the purpose of number one, my boyfriend moved, so I moved. And then number two, Auburn is a 45-minute drive from Montgomery, and they had just started their Masters of Social Work program, and they were going through the accreditation process. And by the time I finished, then it would be accredited, and then I would have my master's. Um, so I had about a 9-month gap between graduating with my bachelor's and starting my master's. I did an advanced standing program at Auburn, and I picked Auburn because it was close and because um, I didn't want to do an online program. I knew that I didn't want to do online. I knew that that wouldn't be helpful for me. Um, and so I started in Auburn at August of 2019. And I met, a wonderful group of people. The professors there were awesome. I learned a lot. And then we all know what happened in March of 2020. So I ended up doing it online anyway. Um, but I graduated in August of 2020, so it took me just about a year. I was able through Auburn to get an assistantship, so my degree was paid for, so I didn't have to worry about getting extra debt. And I was able to work through that assistantship. This is where my work with adjudicated youth comes in. I worked for the adolescent-based sex offense prevention program that Auburn University runs at Mount Meg's DYS campus. And so I was working with children, but it didn't really feel like I was working with children because they were like tiny criminals, right? But I learned that um, not everybody who is in the prison system necessarily understands why they're there, right? These were a lot of boys who had been offended against. It was a lot of boys who it was very familial. Um, their uncle did whatever to them, and so they did whatever to the person below them. A lot of them had intellectual delays or intellectual disabilities, and they did not understand that what they had done was wrong. It was boys who were 16 and their girlfriends were 14, and they didn't understand that that was technically illegal. Um, and so I learned that the title of sex offender, that is a heavy term, and a lot of people do deserve it, but some people don't. And so that was quite an eye-opening experience for me, especially just working with the prison system. What you have to go through just to get in one of those places. You have to have a clear bag, and you can't take your phone, and you can't have a watch on, and you can't, have pants with pockets on and all kinds of stuff. And so that taught me a lot. And after I graduated, um, my master's internship was with a substance abuse prevention program who had, or they had several it's a nonprofit, works with grants. And so through that job, I learned a lot about grant work. I learned a lot about what it means to walk out what you've agreed to, or what your agency has agreed to with the federal government, and what it means when you don't reach those goals, and what it means when you have to pivot. And I also learned through one of those programs, I worked with mental health first aid. So I was a mental health first aid trainer. Um, and so that was where I got to sort of stretch and grow my presentation skills. I got to um, engage a lot more with communities and a lot more with professionals, and I got to experience what it's like to kind of speak publicly and what that looks like. Um, and that agency taught me a lot of good things and a lot of bad things. Um, and then that agency, one of the grants ended. So a grant I was working on ended. And the nature of grant work is you got to do something else. And I was moved into a different program in the agency and I didn't like it. I did not understand why I was doing what I was doing. I did not like to do what I was doing. And there was a lot of inconsistency in the leadership. And so I left. I didn't have a backup plan, but sometimes in this life, when something no longer serves us, we have to make that call. And so um, I left. I didn't have a job lined up, but I was going on interviews and I was interviewing for other social work positions for hospices and nursing homes. And ironically, all of the interviews I was getting were working with aging populations. And then I submitted an application online for ombudsman. It just popped up, and I said, "Hey, I know what that word means." Because when I was working in the nursing home, we had an ombudsman. I was like, I know what that word means. It's with a company I've never heard of and never seen before, but I'm going to apply for it. And then our HR director called me and we had an interview. I had an interview with our previous executive director and the HR representative, and they liked me and they hired me. And now I'm here. Um, so my social work career has been storied. Um, but I have learned from everywhere I've been. And I've picked up some stuff from everywhere I've been. And I think that it's allowed me to grow um, into what I'm able to do today.
Megan, you did such a fantastic job. And I love how you use your social work journey has been storied because
Mhm.
you did an amazing job of telling us that story. It was
Thank you.
great. I want to go back to something because I'm always curious, especially one, congratulations to you for
Thank you.
being one of the first people in your family to be able to go to college and the support you must have felt. I'm just thinking about even just secure attachment. I'm thinking attachment style that you felt comfortable enough to leave your small town and everything you've known and what you thought you knew would happen to your life to go off. This again, going back to your mother and your grandparents and your great grandmother being able to give you that steady, safe foundation. But because you were like on your own familial wise going to college, how did you know? Because when I got my BSW from Auburn and I thought that was it. That's all I needed to do. And in fact, my mother, who didn't go to college, she was like, when I told her I was getting my master's, she's like, why are you doing that? She was so confused. Like, why are you doing that? So I'm always curious, like, how did you know, especially as a person who wasn't raised in a family that was college educated, how did you know why and that you needed to get your MSW?
I think the foundation was really laid at Jacksonville State. A lot
Mm-hmm.
of those professors were encouraging all of us, like, hey, in the way that the field is changing right now, you can be successful with a BSW, but if you want to make more than $30,000 a year, and if you want to be able to grow and be more than, a case manager at DHR, or, if you want to do more than an entry level position, you kind of have to get a higher education in the field of social work. I also at that time thought that maybe I wanted to be a counselor. And I thought I wanted to be a therapist. And I knew that I could get a counseling degree and I could, go on to be an LPC or whatever. But number one, if I got an MSW, it would be faster. And number two, I think that MSWs are very versatile degrees to have. Because if you get a degree in counseling, you're you've pigeonholed yourself into being a counselor. But if you get an MSW, you can become an LMSW, you can be an LICSW, you can get your private practice, you can do whatever you want. So I can still, if I get a wild hair in 5 years, decide that I want to be, a therapist. I can still work towards that goal of being a therapist, and I haven't pigeonholed myself into just being a counselor forever. And now, I can't see myself with the job that I'm doing and with the things that I've done. I can't see myself if I had spent 2 years getting a degree and then getting all those hours of practicum and then finding a place and doing all of that and then sitting in the same office 5 days a week and doing the same thing. I just can't see myself doing that. And so, yeah, the foundation was really laid at Jacksonville to think about getting a master's. And then I'll also say I have a really wonderful pair of aunts who both had higher education, and they both were very encouraging to me. And they were like, we will support you with whatever you want to do, but this really sounds like the thing that you need to do. And so I was very encouraged by my aunt Rebecca and my late aunt, her name's Carol Brown. Um, they both were like, we will stick beside you and we will help you and guide you through whatever you need. And so I was really encouraged by those people. And again, the incredible team of professors at Jacksonville State University were really forward thinking with us about getting our degrees.
I love that. And I hope you share this with those professors if you're still connected to them. I love talking to people about their university experiences. And there's been a couple other interviewees who came and who went to Jacksonville State, but you're the first one who really let us know how beautiful the campus is,
Mhm.
how amazing the professors are, what an amazing experience, and how much you felt like you learned a lot. And I'm
Mhm.
going to say this because I actually taught a graduate program for several years, and I got my BSW from Auburn University. And when I went to the University of Alabama to get my MSW, I hadn't even graduated yet, but I was so prepared for that degree. When you went to Auburn, because I know how well that program is, I know how top tier that program is. Did you feel, and I already know the answer to this, but did you feel like you were prepared for that graduate program at Auburn University from what you got from Jacksonville State?
I really, really did. I
Mm-hmm.
felt really prepared. And my experience at Auburn was unique in that I started most of their advanced standing programs started in May and then went through May, but I submitted my application 2 days late. And so instead of joining that cohort that started in May, they allowed me to start in August with the regular path graduate students. So I was in classes with people who were, at that point, they had just gone through their first year of graduate school at Auburn. And so they had just learned about all of the social work foundation. And they would come to me and ask me questions about some foundational things that they had just learned because it was still fresh for them, but I already had the foundation. And I just think that most of the professors that I had at Jacksonville, I don't think are there anymore. I think they've either retired. I think one of them actually passed. But um, I think that they had such a wealth of knowledge to share. And not only did they have that wealth of knowledge, but because it was such a small campus and such a small group of people, it lended to them being able to sort of pour into us a little bit more. And we as a cohort kind of got really close at Jacksonville State as well, because it really does bond you. And so we were kind of able to pour into each other as students and really solidify what our professors had given us.
I love that. And I love your journey. You have done so many different things, and I'll say some of those things again in a minute, but the fact that you did nursing home work, the fact that you worked one-on-one with some of the tougher clients with the sex offenders, and then you even did grant work. You
Mhm.
know, a lot of people, one of the things that happened to me, one of the parts of my social work journey is in 2008, 2009, my grant didn't get renewed. And I was like, oh, that really happens,
Mhm.
and being able to get it, to really learn that your grant and your salary is tied to this money. So you need to pay attention
Yeah.
to what money is coming through the agency and how can you make sure that those deliverables are met. But you've done so much in social work over almost decade that you've had your degrees. What has changed? Is there a belief about social work or a value about social work that has changed for you over the years?
I think that your worldview kind of has to change, or it kind of has to change because the world that we are in 2025 is not the world I graduated in 2018, right? Um, the the systems that we serve are so much different. The funding sources are different. The ability to get those funds are so much different. And so I will admit I do have quite a cynical view on how things have progressed. I do think it's harder to be a helping in a helping profession right now. I used to think that like well, I won't say that. I used to be in classes with people or work with people who had that mindset that like everything was rainbows and butterflies and like we can change the world, right? And now I'm in a place where I think that the world has to make some huge changes in order for us down here to be able to really do what we need to do to make some positive changes. But that being said, again, those little things add up. So every time that I introduce some of our programs to people, and they're like, oh, I've never heard of that and I can really benefit from it, I think I am impacting positive change. And as long as I'm able to do that, I will do it. Um, but I just think that like it's so much harder now to get the resources we need and have the backing to do what we need to do. And that's social work across the board, right? I don't think that any version of social work has remained the way that it was, I'll say 5 years ago. The pandemic really shifted a lot of things and it shifted how we speak to each other. It shifted how we look at each other. It shifted how um, it shifted our actions, right? And so I think that society has really changed for the worse for the past few years, and that does make what we do harder.
I agree, Megan. I totally agree. And I love that you brought in the programs because one of the things we're going to kind of merge two of the questions I had for you together, but you're doing meso social work,
Mhm.
letting the community know about these amazing programs at CAAC. And one of the things that I know, we talk about micro, which you talked about with the private practicey kind of people and all that, if you want to go the clinical route. And oftentimes I hear a lot about macro social work, right? But sometimes I think meso, that middle child, gets kind of lost, but it is such an important piece of the social work practice. One, what drew you into doing this kind of public facing, community rooted work? And then talk to us about all the different programs at CAC that you share with the community.
So in that previous role that I had spoke about where I was I kind of got to train with the mental health first aid trainings. I really caught a bug for being able to share information because I think that the information that our agency has to share is so important and so vital. And I just got so comfortable talking to people about things that they really didn't ask for and didn't really want to hear about, but I was going to tell them anyway, right? So, those trainings that I was doing, they were being forced upon people. They were, they're higher ups were making them take the trainings, or they needed CEUs, or whatever the case was. So they weren't really super invested in what I was saying, but I was still going to say it, and I was going to let people know that what I was saying was important. And so when I started at CAAC as an ombudsman representative, my job didn't have a ton of that forward facing outreach. I was really talking to residents in nursing homes and doing one-on-ones and intervening on their behalf on issues that they had. But another piece of that is we have to do outreach as an ombudsman. And so every time an event came up at the agency and they were like, who wants to go do this? I was like, me. Because once again, I have something to say and somebody's going to listen to me. And so, I just love getting to talk to people. Again, when I worked in that nursing home and it was like hanging out with my friends all day, whenever I go out to an event and I get to chop it up with anybody, I'm hanging out with my friends, right? And so I just really love that connection. I love sharing the information. I think our agency is so cool. I really think that the programs that we have are so cool. And I lost my nanny to Alzheimer's. I lost my nana to dementia. My papa suffered a triple quadruple bypass, and then he had a stroke and was not able to recover. And so he really suffered for 2 or 3 years in really terrible health. And if I had known about the services that I know about now, I could have helped them. And I could have kept my Nana at home instead of having her go to a nursing home. And I could have helped my papa get in-home services instead of watching, him and my Nana take care of themselves. And I could have helped my aunt with our caregiver respite program when she was really overwhelmed and really burdened by that active caregiving. And so I think our programs are the coolest programs in the world. And if I don't tell people about them, how are they going to know? And so, as an ombudsman, I was doing all of the outreach that I could, and I was telling everybody that I could about our programs. And I became really disenchanted with the work of being an ombudsman just because ombudsmen are advocates for folks who live in nursing homes and assisted living facilities. They are sort of a go-between the resident and the facility. So in order for them to resolve complaints, about 9 other people have to get in line and do what they're supposed to do, right? So CNAs, housekeeping, dietary, the administrators, and there is just so much red tape and so much pushback. And it was really a microcosm of the failure of the healthcare system. So every day I felt like I was slamming my head in a car door trying to get things done. My residents were still, happy to see me. They knew that I was there and I was trying my best, and they would, pat my hand and they would be like, "It's okay, darling. We know that you're working on it." And I would be like, "Yeah, but I can't fix it." And that was really frustrating to me. I'm a Virgo, I'm a fixer. I like to get things handled. One of my coworkers, you've had her on the podcast, Monica, she just called me bossy like 40 minutes ago. And she's like, "So you've always been bossy?" And I'm like, "Yes, I have." But I get results in what I am bossy about, right? So I became really disenchanted with that job, but I love this agency. And so I didn't want to leave, but I went to our executive director and I went to our HR director separately, and I was like, "Hey, I'm not quitting. This is not a quitting conversation, but what I am saying is if something doesn't change quick, fast, and in a hurry, I have to find something else to do because this sucks." I think as social workers, we're afraid to say that something sucks, but sometimes it sucks, and that's okay. But I went to them and I was like, I don't want to leave. I love this agency. I love the work that we do, but I can't do this anymore. Like, this is untenable for me. And so, Yolanda and Amy both saw some value in me, and they chose to make this community outreach coordinator position for me. It wasn't, well, they didn't make it for me. I still had an interview. Mm. But they made it for me. And so I have been so lucky, and I'm so grateful that they saw the value in what I had to offer for the agency, and they decided to keep me on. Because again, we have the coolest programs in the world, and I want everybody to know about them. So I want to tell you about our ADRC program. That is our Aging and Disability Resource Center. They're our intake line. And those gals are kind of our front door to getting into our agency. So if you call our agency, you will get sent to them, and they're going to screen you for all 18 of our programs to make sure that you're getting the right ones. So just because you call for Alabama Cares with Monica doesn't mean you won't also get a senior RX referral, and doesn't mean you won't also get a SHIP referral, and doesn't mean you won't also get a Medicaid waiver referral. You're going to get whatever you need to make sure that you are taken care of, because you can utilize almost every program in our agency at the same time. Um, and so those girls are really good about calling people back. They're really good about answering their phones. They're really good about making sure that people have the information they need to do what they need to do. And along with that, if you call our agency about something like bill pay or something like food pantries or something like that, we don't have that here. We just don't have the capacity. But they will get you connected to an agency that does bill pay or to one of the food pantries we work with. And so it's a program we call One Door Alabama. So they are the one door that you can walk through to get wherever you need to go. We have programs, we have a homemaker program and a home modification program. We have a homemaker program, they come in 2 hours a week, and it's like light housekeeping, helping you with groceries. Maybe they take you to the store and get you what you need. But it's for people to remain in the home and remain independent, but maybe they just need a little bit of help to get by. It's to make sure that they remain in their homes. They don't fall because they bent over too far to clean the toilet or something like that. Um, and I think that's such a cool program. We also have a home modification program. And that helps people, we can build ramps into homes. We can widen doorways for wheelchairs. We can provide shower chairs and grab bars. Again, we want people to maintain their independence and remain in their homes for as long as possible. We don't want to see people in facilities. We don't want to see people in hospitals. Our mission is to keep people where they are so that they're happy and healthy and safe for as long as they can be. And so I just think that our programs are so cool. We also have legal services here. Um, our legal services, anybody 16 and older in our Tri-County area will qualify for. And we do free wills, powers of attorney, and advance directives. And they're absolutely free. We have lawyers in the area they'll be like, well, we're running a deal. We're going to charge $1,500 for a couple. A lot of people in our area, especially we're the river region, we know that we're predominantly African American. We're predominantly people who have very few resources and very few assets. And we're also predominantly most people in Alabama have a third grade reading level, right? So if they're working with a lawyer that's maybe not trustworthy, there might be something in there that they don't know about. But our lawyer is so passionate about elder law. She is one of the most wonderful people I've ever met, and she loves connecting people with those legal services, and she does it at such a low salary because she's working through a nonprofit, but it's her heart work, right? So this is something that she's passionate about. And she could leave us and be a divorce attorney and make $1 billion, but she doesn't want to do that. She wants to stay here and she wants to help our seniors get what they need. And so um I'm so I love the agency that I work for. I love the people that I work with. I think I work with some of the coolest and most passionate people in the world. And I think we have the coolest resources, and I hate that not everybody knows about them.
Megan, that was so great. That was so great. You can hear the passion in your voice. And I'm going to attest, I got to meet a lot of the women you work with. They are really passionate about the work they do. And I keep hearing over and over and over. I didn't know that was what we called it, but it's the One Door Alabama. You
Mhm.
call, and if CAAC doesn't have it, they will connect you to the agency or the resource that does. And and it's One Door Alabama.
Mhm.
It truly is One Door Alabama. You did such an amazing, and the whole time you were talking, I was thinking, The legacy of women who held you up, they are so proud of you.
Mhm.
They are so proud of you. You did such a great job. And also, one of the things I heard from maybe one of your colleagues who was on the podcast previously is that a lot of these services women need. The ones, the home modification, the homemaker, women, the women don't realize, especially those who are elderly, that they can have someone come in and do some light housekeeping to
Mhm.
help keep them safe.
Yeah.
They can get a little bit of help with their prescription. I
Hmm.
had Claire on. She was amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love Claire. She
She's
was
a
really
cutie.
amazing.
Yeah.
She's such a cutie. But how so the AR, the gals who answer the phones, what is that one?
ADRC.
ADRC. And so
Hmm.
that's all a person has to do is just call that, and we'll make sure the number and the link is in
Hmm.
your podcast description. But we'll make sure that number is, do you want to go ahead and say the number?
Yeah, sure. It's 334-240-4680 is our main line. And then
Mm-hmm.
our direct ADRC line is 334-240-4670.
And they can just call that line and say, hey, I have the, and it could be a caregiver and or it could be a person who is aging. Because one of the other things I've learned about Central Alabama Aging Consortium, it's not just for the elderly, it's for the whole lifespan of folks. If you're aging, there's potentially a service that could potentially help you.
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of our folks, especially on our med waiver program, those are younger people, younger than 60, younger than 55, who are, they have lifelong disabilities or they're struggling to take care of themselves, struggling with those activities of daily living. And so we have a lot of younger people on our programs. Our senior centers, you got to be 60 to go to those. Clears program, we can do a referral and you can be 18 and get those senior RX services. For Monica's program, you can be a caregiver taking care of somebody 55 and older. So um, you don't have to be the you don't have to be aged
Yeah, the
to
aging. Yeah.
benefit from that. And then Monica's program also, she has a grandparents program. So she has a program where folks 55 and older who are raising a child that's not theirs, she gets soccer cleats or goes to summer camp or technology for school or uniforms or whatever. And so children can benefit from our programs too, right? So yeah, when you think about area agency on aging, you think, oh, you have to be hugely old to benefit from it, but that's not true. And a lot of people who are 55 don't consider themselves to be seniors in the least, right? So when I say, I'll talk to somebody and I'll say, well, this program starts at 55, and they're like, I'm 55. I'm not old, I'm 55. And I'm like, well, I didn't say you were. I just said that you qualify. So yeah, our programs, they can help a lot of folks.
And I hope we're doing that today. And in fact, you coming on the podcast is probably part of how you get the word out, right? And so, what does outreach actually look like in your day to day work? I know you've been involved in things like Mayfest, the health fairs, radio appearances. The guys in social pocket is so lucky to have you to be able to talk about the programs and just to hear your excitement and passion about them. But on a day to day basis, how do you connect people to the support they may not know exists?
My job is I fill in a lot of gaps here. So from like this morning, so we have a production printer upstairs, and my job is to print all of the promotional materials we use to provide to the community. And a lot of times I'm designing those things as well. So I design flyers, I design rack cards, I design brochures, I design pamphlets. Um, I do a lot of graphics work. Did I learn that in social work school? No, I did not, but it is part of what I do. Did I learn how to operate a Xerox machine in social work school? No, I did not, but it's part of what I do. So I do a lot with production of our materials. I help, I'm sort of a resource to all of our programs for kind of just bouncing ideas off of what do you want to do with this event? How should we do this? How should we do that? Um, can you help me with thinking of things to order? Can you change this logo? Can you do, I do a lot of that stuff. I also, yeah, just yesterday I was at a resource fair, so I do table setups. I go out and I've talked to a lot of church groups, senior groups in churches. I've talked to the NAACP chapter of Montgomery. I've talked to a lot of smaller groups that are gathered that are mostly seniors, but some people who are younger. And I just talk about our services. So something that I say a lot is I'll talk to anybody who stands still long enough. And that is kind of the truth. And again, whether you want to hear about my services or not, I'm gonna tell you. And so I do a lot of, I'm in and out, I'm running around. I help with information drop-offs places. So if somebody just wants our information to have in their office, I'll take it to them. And as far as our events go, I'm kind of I'm on most of those committees to figure out how we're going to plan the events, what we're going to do at the events, who's going to be there. Um, and so my favorite things to do throughout the year, bar none, are Mayfest. I love Mayfest. I love the Christmas dance, and I love one of our senior centers hosts a prom. And those are my favorite things to do. I do set up tables and I do have my information there, but mostly I'm dancing is what I'm doing at those events. You can find me and my number one homegirl, Camille Jackson, our in-home services director, on the dance floor. And we're cutting a rug with our friends. So it looks like, anything that I need to be here is what my job is that day. Um, Whether it's fixing the printer, which is what I'm doing today, doing a service call, or making flyers for a program, or being a resource for how we should do an event, where we should hold an event. Can you, find a venue? Can you do this? Can you do that? I'm a very pulled in different directions. I have that kind of position. I also work very closely with our Dementia Friendly Alabama coordinator and her program because she does a lot of trainings and I have a training background and we work really well together. She's one of my favorite people in the entire world. And so it's really easy for us to hit the road and go to Alabama or to Anniston, Alabama, or tomorrow we're going to Samford University to train a bunch of students on dementia and things like that. So I'm statewide with her because her grant is a statewide grant, and so I am my day to day is being anywhere anybody needs me to be at any given point. And so if I have a list of 5 tasks to complete for the day, I might get 2 of them done because I am busy doing other stuff for other people.
It feels like my day, very
Yeah.
ADD. Like
Yeah.
I might have a list, but I'm gonna get 50 other things done as well.
Yeah.
And you know what I love, and I wanted to circle back around to this is the Guys of Social Work podcast, and we, a lot of our audience members are social workers, and so one of the things I heard you say is you were getting a little. You said disillusioned. I heard burned out about the ombudsman.
Mhm.
But yet you knew you had the emotional intelligence to know it's not social work, it's not even the agency, it's just this position.
Mhm.
And then to have the gumption, the courage to be like, I'm not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I want to stay here. I think I make a huge difference. And your executive director and your HR person being able to figure out your strengths and to create a job around that. Yeah, you had to interview for it, wink, wink. But to be able to know and see your value and hone in on that, what do they say? Chef's kiss.
Yeah.
Chef's kiss. And one of the things I am learning about the CAAC is, I interviewed Melissa with the nutrition program. She had an interview for a whole nother position, and
Mhm.
she all of just the way that you guys or the way that that agency is able to use your strengths for good is what
Mhm.
makes you so successful. And all we're trying to do is just get the word out. Before we transition to the Remember Me screening, and what you're hoping people are going to get out of that, which we're also going to be having a resource fair that day.
Mhm.
So, yay. What are there any other programs that we haven't touched that we need to shout out before we move on to that one?
We also have, we are contracted through Blue Cross Blue Shield of Alabama. We have health coaches who work for us. So they provide sort of extra resources and extra help to Blue Advantage members who are on those Medicare programs. And they're just kind of like an extra resource for people who might find themselves in the hospital more, who might go to the doctor more. And it's kind of a way for Blue Cross to make sure that their members are being taken care of. So our health coaches can help with appointments, they can help with transportation, they make referrals to all of our other different programs. They help with things like rollators or shower chairs or walkers or whatever the people need. And they'll take them to them. You know, they do house calls. They will help them with whatever they need, really. Getting them in touch with food assistance or wherever. And I think our health coaches is a really cool program that we have as well, for those Blue Advantage members who need them.
That is awesome. I am in love with the CAC, and I love how they're using the women. And I don't know, I haven't met a man yet, but the women that are working in that agency for their best and highest good so that the people that you guys serve get the best from you guys as well. So that is awesome. And I feel so blessed that we're going to be able to do our upcoming Remember Me screening and community event at CAC on November 1st.
Mhm.
And we're going to be educating folks on dementia, not just Alzheimer, but the umbrella term dementia. We're going all most of the coordinators are going to be there talking about and sharing more information about their programs. You're going to be there. Yay, I'm so excited about that. But what is it that you hope attendees will get from that day?
I hope that people understand that they are not alone in their fight. I have gone through caregiving for folks struggling with Alzheimer's dementia. I just lost my grandfather in July. He suffered from vascular dementia. So I've really walked through the caregiving process. From the time that I was 10 is when my nanny was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. So I've really seen the impact of what it looks like for family members. And especially those main caregivers, if you are a primary caregiver for somebody dealing with dementia, Alzheimer's, any sort of cognitive decline, um, our loved ones are never a burden, but caregiving is a burden. And I think that it's okay to say that, but I want people to understand that if they are feeling burdened by caregiving, they are not alone. There are resources out there for them. There are people here, and in our community who can help. And we are here anytime that they need us. Most people find us in states of panic. Most people come to us when it's already too late. But I want people to know about us before it's too late so that we can help them through those crises and be able to get to the other side of it without any negative impact to themselves. Because caregivers, I think I read a statistic, it was something like they lose 3 years of their life for every 1 year of caregiving. Caregiving is so impactful, on a person's physical and mental health. And so, I just want caregivers to know that there are resources that they can utilize before they get really, really burnt out and really beaten down by it.
Yeah. And so come join us on November 1st. It's the 50th year anniversary of CAC in November as well. I know I'm doing the Alzheimer's dementia walk the next weekend. So there's
Mhm.
something about Alzheimer's and caregiving that month. So come out and get resourced, find out that you can be supported and get some education. And we're going to feed you too. So we're excited
Yeah.
about that. Yeah. So thank you, Megan, for that. And this was such a great interview. I'm so glad that you said yes and so glad you were able to share your social work journey and all about the programs at CAC. But I have just one last question. And you have carried so many identities: social worker, daughter, sister, wife, outreach, fur baby mama,
Mhm.
coordinator, community builder. If you could whisper one thing to your younger self, standing at the edge of St. Clair County, about to enter this profession, what would you say to her?
I'm going to go back to a quote. So Theodore Roosevelt once said that the best things in life one of the best things that life gives us is the ability to work hard at work worth doing. And so if you find work worth doing, work as hard as you can and do as much as you can, and you will feel fulfilled at the end of it.
So perfect. So perfect. Thank you, Megan, for showing us what community center outreach really looks like and for reminding us that systems only work when the people inside them care. I know our listeners will walk away feeling seen, affirmed, and reminded that sometimes the most powerful work is simply making sure people know what's available to them and feel worthy of receiving it. So, for all of you guys listening, you can learn more about Megan's work and the programs at CAAC by the link that I will leave in her podcast description. And if you're near Montgomery, I hope you'll join us for the Remember Me documentary screening and gathering on November 1st at CAAC. And until next time, take care of yourselves and take care of each other. I'm Renita, and this has been the Goddesses of Social Work podcast.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Goddesses of Social Work podcast. We are glad you were here. If you like this episode, please come back to hear more stories of the journeys through social work, and please leave us a review on Apple or Spotify. See you next time here on the Goddesses of Social Work podcast.